But we used to be up there every Saturday, and of course, used to hear Lloyd give us the great start. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Stateline Speedway. You know, he'd have that sort of drum.
My family was farmers. It was just something I decided to do on my own.
Was there some?
I always liked cars and tinkered with them, and like I say, that just happened to be.
You build your own car, Marty?
Sometimes I did. Sometimes I drove for Julian Buzink from Finley Lake, and George Bernhardt from up in Erie. I drove 67, 68 Chevelles for him.
What was your number, Marty?
Well, with Buzink, I run number 59. And with George Bernhardt, I think he had number 47. And then when I went driving for myself, we picked number 21 and stuck with that.
Why number 21?
I don't know. It just seemed to be, maybe it's because I was a David Pearson fan or something.
Well, that's a good one to have.
Yeah. Then I believe it was 1961, I started driving there.
Was it late models at that time?
Yeah, it was a 61 Ford, or 60 Ford that Julian Buzink owned. Fred Knapp and I co-drove it. Oh, golly, Rollerball Speedway at Watts Flats, Sulphur Springs Speedway, Stateline in Erie, up to Con Ed, Raceway 7. We traveled all over. Race in Erie's, and we won a couple 50-lappers up there. I had more success at Erie and on Raceway 7 than I did at Stateline. Dan Palmgren, I spoke with him a while ago, and we had to reminisce about one time he let me drive his race car, and the throttle stuck and I hit the wall of Stateline, and that was pretty difficult, because that ruined Dan's race car. In 1964.
This was Chuck Piazza.
Yeah, Chuck and Maynard Lobb, they owned the car, and Wee Willie Wilson and Chuck Piazza and myself were basically teammates.
And did you have some success?
No, I'll tell you, I didn't have a good crew, and we weren't up to date on engines and stuff like we should have been. I have to say that was probably one of my low times. Oh, Squirt John, Bobby Schnars was just getting going about that time also. I believe Ron Blackmer come along right about that same period, maybe just a couple of years after that. Emory Mahan was racing. Like I say, Fred Knapp. Let's see, Dean Layfield raced a race or two where I was involved. Well, he was one of the top dogs at the time of it. You know, ran number 9/16. Because he said everything on his car had a 9/16 wrench head on it. Sammy LaMancuso, Jimmy Pollaro, I believe, was racing at the time. See, Tom Dill, he was a hot shot back in about those heydays also.
What was he like?
First, crazy. We had our run-ins, but also we became real good friends and used to do a lot of goofy things together.
Such as? What kind of goofy things?
Oh, we might skip out from work every once in a while and go swimming during the summertime, or just goof off. He was a hard charger, hard-headed, didn't care who he pushed out of the way. But he could be a nice guy also. We were talking about Tom Dill, and he was driving a Chevrolet for Joe Mobilia, and they wanted me to try it out. And I said, well, this car isn't handling worth a darn. I pulled it in off after a very few laps, and Dill told me, he said, oh, you just don't know how to drive a race car. And he jumped in and he made about 2 laps and flipped that thing end over, and he got out and he said to me, you know, I guess you're right, that thing don't handle real good. That was probably one of the funniest things that I didn't have as much upfront success as I would have liked to have. It took me until, I believe, 1965 before I won my first feature race there. Because, like I say, when I first started out, I would run the heat races and maybe the semi, and Fred Knapp would drive the features. We shared the car.
Right. By the way, we've not had many people comment on Fred Knapp. What was he like?
Fred was a real good racer. In fact, he was Stateline Series point champion one year. I don't remember the exact year. I think it was 73, maybe. Okay, well, thank you much, and you tell everyone